Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Alexis and today I'm going to be sharing all of the books that I read for September 2022. As I mentioned in my August 2022 wrap up that I posted yesterday, I intend to wrap up and catch up with myself in terms of what books I've read over the past few months. So today, September, tomorrow, October, the next day, November, and then I will have finally caught myself up for 2022. Essentially, September was me reading the Kingmakers series by Sophie Lark. It is the spin-off series from Brutal Birthrights, and essentially Kingmakers is the next generation, they're kids. It's supposed to give new adult romances, college aspects, Hogwarts vibes, all that jazz, and I will go into further detail as I get into the books. But I also was rereading Harry Potter by listening to the audiobooks as I was reading Kingmakers. So I was really simmering into the magical aspects and the mafia aspects. I heavily enjoy the Harry Potter series. I loved the movies. I didn't read the books until after the movies were completed, but I think they're both very well done in their own right. I love the houses and the overarching themes that run throughout the series. Very well done, and an excellent start for juvenile fantasy fiction, in my opinion. But I can definitely see myself revisiting it in future years as well, just as much as I revisit the movies. So, with that being said, I'll get into my thoughts for the books. The first book that I completed for September was The Heir by Sophie Lark. This is the first book in the Kingmaker series. Like I said, it is the next generation spin-off series from Brutal Birthrights. You do not have to read Brutal Birthrights first, but I think it's only best to do so because there are things that happened in that series that would help better understand the estrangements and entanglements that are in Kingmakers. So be forewarned. This may also provide, I guess, spoilers in terms of the children and who they end up with, who their parents are, and what those estrangements led to for this series. So definitely go back to Brutal Birthrights if you plan on reading Kingmakers. But essentially, The Heir is written in first person, as I believe most of Sophie Lark's books are, if not all of them. But this one is written in first person. There are three perspectives. Two of them are the primary pair, and the third one is supposed to be the second love interest of one of the leading pairs. So it's a love triangle going on. This is considered a contemporary romance, mafia romance, new adult romance because it's taking place around college years. And it is a friends to lovers. Both of them are virgins, or at least the couple that ends up together consists of virgins. As is to be expected with mafia romances, there is some violence in here as well. This book follows Leo and Anna, or Anna. They are children from Brutal Birthright series. Although families in that series are related by marriage and by blood, Leo and Anna are not related by blood at all. So there is no incest here, but they are family tied. So they've known each other all their lives, and their mafia families are very close. When they start school at Kingmakers Academy, they are forced to come face to face with Dean, who is in fact Leo's cousin and enemy due to events in Brutal Birthright series, and again, family estrangement, generational issues. But yes, their feelings are unraveled or focused on in this book. Why did I enjoy this, you may ask? Essentially, I felt this had more focus on the world building than the romance itself. Not attached to any characters, at least at this point when I was first reading the book, but it was decent. I can see the Hogwarts vibes, but it did not hold up as interesting for me, although there were spurts of interest. Because of my attachment to Harry Potter, I already had expectations for this, but as the series progressed, it started to really, I guess, intrigue me enough to want to know the world better, to understand the different houses or departments, different specialties within Kingmakers, the professors of interest. But yes, at this point, I did give this book around 3 to 4 stars, more like 3.5. But some of my favorite moments included the beginning when essentially Leo and Anna are in high school, and she was like the cheer dancer person that they had performing at halftime during basketball games, and Leo was the leading basketball player. You can already see that their family's really close. Some of the parents are there. Some of my favorite couples from Brutal Birthrights are there because they're their parents. But you'll just have to read Brutal Birthrights or watch my review to understand who I may be talking about. Yes, I enjoyed that, and there was reference to Billie Jean, which is a song by Michael Jackson. Very great song, classic. There were also times when Anna would stick up for herself in terms of being like hit on by somebody at the game. She was able to put that person in their place and, have them be aware of keeping their distance in the future. And I love the vibes her father was giving. Again, you would have to read to understand who her father is. I enjoyed Seb, who, well, essentially Sebastian was one of the heroes in the Brutal Birthright series, and he commented that you shouldn't have married such a pretty wife if you didn't want beautiful daughters. And then the father of Anna replied, a serious strategic error. And it was just such a funny line to me. If you had read the series, you'll understand. And also the aspect of it being, a father doting on his wife and daughters is just so sweet to me. There was another line from Dean, who is one of the other perspectives. He said, I don't want to think about anything in my real life. That's what books are for, to take you away. And again, it's another line that I think resonates with a lot of readers out there. So, another pivotal moment. Tattoos from the previous series were also mentioned. Anna also started having her own tattoos, and she had one for Leo, and I knew it for a fact that I didn't know what it was, but I suspected from the beginning, as soon as she was mentioning the various tattoos that she had for her family members, and then there was another one she never shared, I knew it had to be for Leo. I also loved the dancing to music aspect. A beautiful thing about Sophie Lark's books is that she incorporates music into her stories. So as you're reading, she does include links to the songs or the name of the song and the artist that she hears in her head cinematically. So it does provide that extra dose of experience that I really enjoy for the books. So when it got to Love Chained, which is one of the songs, I really enjoyed that. There was also a shower run-in, a term of sharing oxygen during a deep dive, sharing of sweater, being each other's first was really cute, and the water rescue. I will also say their arrival at the airport and finally confessing to the parents was also really enjoyable. But again, those are all of my favorite moments throughout the book. Not necessarily my favorite book in this series, but there were snippets throughout that, again, encouraged me to keep going. But after completing the series, I definitely say just keep going, move past the first book. It gets better. After that, I completed the audiobook for Harry Potter Book 4. That I'm not going to give a summary of that because, again, this is just a book series and a set of movies that need to be indulged in and brought up again and again. Regardless of my opinions on the author, I do not agree with her opinions. But I will say this series is done really well and it's very pivotal, which is so interesting to me because it is such an eye opening series and it definitely alludes to a lot of real life themes that were clearly lost on the author but worked out well in this fictitious world, if that makes sense. But yes, that's all I have to say about book 4. After that, I completed The Rebel by Sophie Lark. That was the second book and also written in first person, three perspectives. Features contemporary romance, mafia romance, new adult college aspect, a mention of sexual assault, attempted suicide, violence, and murder. This one, probably my least favorite in the series so far. I only read the first 4 books of the Kingmaker series. I have yet to complete the last one, which is The Savage. But yes, The Rebel essentially is about Zoe and her love interest. So essentially, Zoe was engaged to Rocco, who was kind of a mentally disturbed heir in the heir department of the academy, who enjoyed tormenting her. And because of this, Zoe's sister Kat was also sent to Kingmakers a year younger than Zoe to kind of keep them together. I enjoyed the rescue from the jump. And one of my favorite quotes from this book was from their headmaster, Luther Hugo. Every choice sets the table. Sooner or later, we all sit down to a banquet of consequences. And that is, again, one of those life quotes that I feel like should definitely be remembered. Zoe has her love interest with Miles. Miles is the eldest cousin of Leo and Anna, but again, Leo and Anna from the first book of Kingmaker series are not related, whereas Miles is blood related to Leo and Anna. So, family tree, you'll just have to read it to understand, and a picture of the family tree is included in the book, so don't worry about it. There was the dancing at the party, library scene. Another quote that was mentioned by Benjamin Franklin this time, real life person. He that has once done you a kindness will be more ready to do you another than he whom you yourself have obliged. So essentially, this is referring to the act of kindness. Someone who has already helped you before is more willing to help you again than someone you have previously helped. Again, another pivotal quote that I feel like people should hear about more. I enjoyed the movie night for Zoe and Miles. The second task, essentially, the Kingmakers Academy has a task involved. So, if you are familiar with the Harry Potter series, that does include an aspect of there being, house points that you can earn throughout the year. And there's also the tournament, the Goblet of Fire Triwizard tournament that's mentioned in the 4th movie of Harry Potter. So if you think of that, it's similar to what is going on with Kingmakers, only it's regarding the 4 different departments, which include spy, heirs, accountants, and I forget what the 4th one is. But they have to compete in 3 tasks, and it will eventually narrow down to one house that is the winner. So, second task was in here. I enjoyed Ozzy being saved after an incident, but it's unfortunate for the one who was taken. Again, you have to read to understand what I'm alluding to. I enjoyed the new deal that Kat was able to make for Zoe. Miles did comment One thing I know for certain, no man on this planet ever accomplished a goddamn thing without believing he could. It's just, Sophie Lark was dropping some gems when it came to quotes in this book. I don't always highlight them, but you know, it's nice to note. And I don't highlight my books, but I like to mention it in my own notes. So that is one of them. My last but not least favorite part of the book was when Dean became aware of Kat's secret. And that ties into the next book, The Bully. So for The Rebel, I felt like the darker aspects in this were used for shock, but it didn't really contribute to the story, perhaps forgotten by the end of the book. And this time, the relationship seemed to be a little bit rushed. Some of the dialogue felt unnatural for the plot. I'm disappointed Zoe Miles did decide to leave school in the end. I enjoyed the twist with Kat, and it's already hinting at Kat and Dean's relationship for the next book. Although I had a lot of favorite moments throughout the book, that didn't mean I enjoyed the entire book, because I didn't. The relationship with Miles and Zoe in the series are probably my least favorite, next to Anna and Zoe. And again, there are only 5 books total. I read 4 of them, so these two couples were not my favorite. The third book, The Bully by Sophie Lark, is also written in first person, and there are 3 perspectives. It is a contemporary romance, mafia romance, again, new adult romance, and there's some blackmail involved, some BDSM elements, mention of suicide, abandonment, and violence. I can't really talk too much about this without explaining the family dynamics, but I'm just going to focus on Dean and Kat. So, something happened at the end of The Rebel, and Dean was aware of what Kat had done. So now he decided to blackmail her into submission in exchange for his silence. And this dislike turns into lustful attraction, which turns into love. This is my favorite book of the series so far. Dean is considered the equivalent of Draco in Harry Potter. Sophie Lark has said this herself. Some of my favorite moments include the oil. I'm not even gonna. I'm not even going to explain what that is talking about. I enjoyed Snow. Snow is another hero from a book by Sophie Lark titled Snow, respectively. But he became one of the professors or temporary professors in the Kingmakers Academy. He said, "You will never learn to conquer your opponent if you can't conquer yourself." Again, one of those juicy quotes that I love from Sophie Lark. Another moment I enjoyed, Kat interrogating Lola for class. Kat is considered a student of the spy program, so that also goes into effect for her interrogation tactics and the ability to lie. I love that for Kat because she did start out as one of the seemingly weaker characters that were of the plot, but essentially she turns out to be one of the most strong, in my opinion. I enjoyed their first kiss after spilling of food. Dean setting up the tower, and it was romantic. Yeah, it's spicy. There's Kat sticking up for herself. There is whipping involved, but not in the way you might think. It was definitely used as a torture tactic, but essentially proved to be something that proved to Kat Dean's true feelings for her. So I enjoyed that as well. And Lola's haircut. That was interesting. So my thoughts at the time of completing this book, I said, I am shook. I did not go into this thinking I could root for Dean, but Ms. Lark did make him redeemable, and I loved him for all he did, despite how his relationship with Kat started. I love that Dean had a role model in Snow despite his neglectful father and the mother's abandonment. He grew to understand them better and forgive. I relate to his feelings of resentment turning to longing for the estranged family, and I'm glad his growth reflected throughout the book. The sprinkles of the spy's perspective hinted at the next hero, but I appreciate that the story keeps me guessing. The underlining plot throughout the Kingmakers series is that there is a spy at the academy who's trying to infiltrate and, you know, attack certain enemies or whatnot. So I found it interesting in here. It's alluded to as one of the perspectives in this book. Like I said, there are three perspectives. There's Kat, Dean, and then the spy. We do not know who they are until reading The Spy, but it does keep it interesting to keep you guessing throughout the series, which is another reason why I proceeded with this series. With that being said, I did note to myself certain clues that ran throughout the book, but I'm not going to share them here because, again, it's more interesting as you get into it, and because of that mystery thread, it really rounded out the first four books, in my opinion. I did give this 4.5 stars, rounded it up to 5 for Goodreads. The Spy by Sophie Lark is written in first person and three perspectives as well. It features contemporary romance, mafia romance, hate to love, false identity. There's some, of course, kidnapping, betrayal, revenge, violence, and death involved. And of course, it is a new adult romance. This is book 4 of the series. Clues are throughout the series, but you could not be certain until you read this one. I can't really say too much about this book without spoiling it, so I'll try to be really, really brief. But some of my favorite parts of this book include the prologue, the introduction of new characters to the academy, the reveal of who the spy was, certain teacher's identity. I enjoyed the swimming aspect, the flashbacks of the father's perspective of the spy, mind you. But yes, there are other favorite moments for the book that are noted in my Goodreads if you wish to check that out. But I'm not going to go any further because the rest may be considered spoilers. I can't say too much other than that. Just know that it was a pleasant treat for me, and it included a lot of suspenseful elements. I love that this tied in with the book from the Underworld series, so that may provide a hint. And I have yet to read that still. This was obviously written with the intention of being the last book of the series, but I still intend to read The Savage, which is the 5th and final book of the series. But at this point, I still have yet to do so, and it's already been a couple months. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I listened to the audiobooks for book 5 and 6 of Harry Potter, respectively. They are Order of the Phoenix and Half-Blood Prince. I listened to those both as I was completing the Kingmaker series. But yes, I also wanted to complete the Harry Potter series and read Sophie Lark's series because of an exhibit that was being held at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. I'm thankful I was able to go with one of my close friends. I'll insert some pictures here. But yeah, I had a great time. Definitely for Harry Potter lovers. Hopefully one day I'll be able to go to Universal again, visit Hogsmeade and Hogwarts, because I was only able to make it in Hogsmeade the day I went and it was raining, so I couldn't make it all the way to the castle. But yes, those books I completed around that time. After completing those Harry Potter books, I read Longshot and Blockshot. I listened to the audiobooks on my Hoopla. These are both written by Kennedy Ryan. Probably my favorite contemporary romance author. I mean, I have yet to feel what I feel for her and her books. So, yes, I was hoping to attend her book tour in New York in November for her newest book, before I let go, but I wasn't able to do so. But I did do a whole less than 24-hour reading vlog on that book, so feel free to check that out as well. And the last book I read in September was Southern Storms by Brittany Cherry. Also goes by Brittany C. Cherry, but I believe she only publishes by one now. I listened to the audiobook of Southern Storms, and this is the first book in a series. It is written in first person, and it's mostly dual perspective, with the exception of chapter 1. So, this is a contemporary romance. It is a multiracial romance, considering the heroine is biracial. It's small town romance, found friends to lovers. So it had been a long period of time and they were reunited. Mention of grief, loss of loved ones, divorcee, history of verbal and physical abuse, illness, and betrayal. So, after the loss of family and recently divorced, Kennedy moves into a house her sister and brother in law flipped for her in Kentucky. There, she runs into the recently single town grump Jax. It's not long before the two realize that they knew each other as children at camp and respectfully nicknamed each other Sun and Moon. Over the course of the book, it is revealed why Jax turned out the way he did and why Kennedy's grief consumes her. Some of my favorite moments included the beads found in the plumbing. If you read it, I hope you laugh out loud as I did. I enjoyed them meeting again among the daisies, Jax seeing their initials, Jax described as a mix of Damon from The Vampire Diaries and Hook from Once Upon a Time. Damon from The Vampire Diaries, I always rooted for him from episode 1. I always forgave him regardless how messed up he was. And Hook from Once Upon a Time, delicious, devilish, love it. Only in fictitious world, mind you. Real life couldn't happen, but in fantasy we can make it happen. So I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed their gift exchange as children, so there are some flashbacks in this book. The secret room in the library, and carrying her in the rain. So, why did I enjoy this book? I consumed this by listening to audiobook. Kennedy was kicked to the curb by her trash husband after over a year since an accident. She found a haven in Jax's town, and that's also where her sister's house was. Kennedy was in the middle of her grief and couldn't even work on her profession as a writer. Jax, a plumber for the town, was taking care of his father's business despite their poor relationship and his father's failing health. I thought that the story was average considering that the main couple knew each other as children and were apart for more than a decade. I did not appreciate the twist at the end of the book. It still felt unresolved and the betrayal drama was still fresh. I did give this 3 out of 5 stars. Unfortunately, I don't really remember what happened, but I guess that also feeds into the fact that this was a mess story for me based on the rating. Threes tend to do that for me, but I still found some enjoyment with it because I still listed favorite moments. I do intend to push on with the next book, which I believe is Western Storms. I could be wrong, or Northern Storms. But both of those are out as well. So I will continue on with the series, but I'm in no hurry to do so because of my reaction to the first book. And those are all the books that I read for September. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these or have any interest in doing so. Maybe if you have some book recommendations that gave off the same vibes or maybe even better vibes. I'd love to hear that as well. But that's all for now. My name's Alexis, and until next time, take care and happy reading.